On a distant trade station beneath emerald skies, Captain Marcus Reeves stood on a crowded docking platform and watched. Cargo ships glide past like silent whales beneath glassy water. He had served in the Star Navy for 10 years, picking through dust in abandoned outposts to protect human traders from pirates. Yet tonight, his heart felt restless. He longed for something beyond routine patrols and flashing control panels. The station's lights pulsed in soft greens and blues, and overhead speakers played gentle alien melodies. In the midst of humming, machinery and hurrying officers, Marcus sensed a calm presence waiting to be discovered. Alara of the Thalanori moved along the platform with quiet strength. She had come to the station on a mission of peace, carrying rare medicinal herbs from her homeworld for suffering colonies. Tall and slender, with skin the color of moonlit lavender, she wore robes woven from luminescent threads. Her violet eyes held ancient wisdom, and each step felt like a careful dance. She noticed Marcus's uniform first, the badge of his rank glinting in soft light. Though different species often kept their distance, Solara felt drawn to his steady gaze and the kindness in his folded arms. Their first words came by chance when a small cargo crate rolled loose at Solara's feet. Marcus lunged forward to steady it and asked, "This yours?" His voice was warm and clear. Solara tilted her head and replied in melodic tones, "Yes, thank you." Her accent was unlike any human dialect he had heard, but he recognized respect in her tone. He offered to help carry the crate, and together they walked through winding corridors filled with glowing signs in many languages. As they moved, they exchanged simple phrases, her describing the healing flowers inside, him explaining how humans adapted to zero gravity. Each moment together felt new and bright. Marcus smiled when Solara laughed at his awkward joke about gravity boots, and she was curious when he showed her a hala of Earth's oceans. He spoke of his childhood near a windy coastline, and she spoke of forests that bloomed under twin suns. Though their words were simple, the feeling between them deepened. In her presence, Marcus did not feel the weight of command or the cold glare of distant stars. In his presence, Solara did not feel the loneliness that sometimes haunted her on long voyages. By the time they reached the station's central plaza, twilight had fallen across the glass domes overhead. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, and crowds of sailors and traders paused to admire the shifting colors. Marcus and Solara stood side by side, feeling a quiet excitement. Neither spoke at first. Instead, they listened to distant music and watched light dance across the polished floor. Then Solara leaned closer and whispered a phrase in her tongue that Marcus did not understand, but he caught the warmth in her voice. He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to hold it, feeling the gentle pressure of his fingers. As they parted that evening, Marcus walked back to his quarters with a full heart. He could not stop thinking of her lavender robes and the kindness in her eyes. Solara returned to her chambers with her own thoughts of him. She wondered at his broad shoulders and the honest strength in his voice. In the quiet hush after their meeting, both felt hope stir where only duty had ruled before. On that peaceful station under emerald skies, an unlikely friendship had begun. And from that gentle spark, the seeds of something deeper took root in uncharted path neither could yet imagine. Under the station's glass dome, the garden was a secret world of soft light and gentle fragrances. Marcus led Solara past glowing ferns and vines that curled like living ribbons along smooth stone paths. He smiled as she reached out to touch a blossom that glowed with pale blue light. "These are called moon petals," he said. "They only open at night." Solara lifted a hand in fascination, and the petals fluttered at her gentle touch. In that moment she felt wonder bloom inside her chest, as though the garden itself welcomed them both. They found a small bench beside a stream of water trickling over polished rocks. Marcus sank onto it and patted the seat beside him. Solara sat, folding her robes carefully so the glowing threads did not catch on anything. He pulled out a small music recorder and tapped a button. A soft jazz tune filled the air notes of saxophone, drifting among the glowing leaves. Solara closed her eyes to listen, and when the music ended, she hummed a few bars of her own song. Her voice was clear and sweet, and Marcus realized he had never heard anything so soothing. He asked her to teach him the melody. She guided his voice in simple syllables until they sang together under emerald light. As they walked deeper into the garden, the path curved upward into a low-gravity dome. Marcus handed Solara a pair of slender bracelets that glowed with small power cells. "These will let us float," he explained with a grin. Inside the dome, the air felt lighter, and they both drifted a few inches above the ground. Solara laughed, her voice like silver bells, when Marcus spun gently and lost his balance, drifting toward the ceiling. Reached out and she caught his sleeve, steadying him. Then she reached for his hand, and together they floated in slow circles, bodies weightless and free. In the soft glow of biolights, their laughter echoed like music, and for a time they forgot the vast distances between their home worlds. When the dome door slid open, they returned to normal gravity and found a small cafe tucked among ferns. Marcus ordered 2 cups of warm spiced tea, his own homemade blend, and handed one to Solara. She sipped carefully, her violet eyes widening at the tang and sweetness. "Taste of home," she said, and her smile was gentle. He watched her face light up with each new flavor and felt a thrill in knowing he had shared something precious. She returned the cup and offered him a leaf from her own pouch, medicinal herb that tasted faintly of mint and honey. Moistened it on his tongue and breathed deeply as its cool warmth spread. "Thank you," he said. "It is soothing." Solara nodded and touched his hand for a moment, warmth passing between them. They sat on a low wall, the dome fading behind them into soft starlight. Marcus pulled a small holoprojector from his coat, a keepsake from Earth, and activated it. A flickering image of rolling sea waves and white foam appeared above his palm. He told Solara about childhood days on a seaside cliff, watching storms roll in. She listened with her head tilted, her hair catching stray lights like stardust. Then she projected a memory of her own, a field of tall, silent trees under twin suns, their leaves falling like sparks of light. Marcus watched the hologram paint the air with golden leaves, and he reached forward to touch the floating leaves. Though he could not hold them, he felt their story inside him, her memories becoming part of his own. As the evening deepened, they walked back toward the station's main corridor. The lights of the garden faded behind them, but their hearts glowed with the moments they had shared. Solara paused by a flowering vine and plucked a single moon petal, handing it to Marcus. He pressed it between his fingers, careful not to crush its gentle glow. "Keep it," she whispered, "to remember tonight." He tucked it into his uniform pocket, a small light against dark fabric. Before partying, Marcus looked into Solara's violet eyes and said, "I think I've never known joy like this." "Before," she smiled, a soft curve of lips that warmed his heart. "Nor I," she replied. With that, they shook hands, a formal gesture, then paused and embraced lightly. Neither let go first. In the hush of the station corridor, 2 very different souls found comfort in each other's arms. And as they stepped away, each carried a promise that their friendship, born among glowing flowers and gentle music, would grow into something strong and true. Under the station's glass dome, Marcus led Solara into a secret garden where bioluminescent flowers glowed like gentle lanterns in the twilight. He pointed to ferns whose fronds curled into perfect spirals and 2 vines that climbed smooth. Marble pillars, their leaves shining in shades of green and silver. Solara reached out and let her fingertips brush against a glowing petal, and Marcus smiled as it pulsed softly under her touch. He had arranged this visit as a welcome gift. Knowing how much she loved plants and the quiet they brought, they walked along a winding stone path that circled a shallow pool, and Marcus bent to scoop up some water on his palm, letting it drip slowly through his fingers. Solara watched him closely, her violet eyes reflecting the shimmering lights. Overhead, and he offered her his hand to feel the cool droplets. She accepted, and together they listened to the soft trickle of water over pebbles. The gentle sound made Marcus feel at peace, and he saw that Solara's shoulders relaxed as she leaned closer to the pool's edge. He pointed out a cluster of small pink blossoms that floated on the surface like delicate stars. "These are called star willows," he explained, "and they only bloom when the dome lights are low." Solara bent to touch one, and its petals opened wider in a faint glow as though greeting her presence. She smiled at Marcus and whispered, "I feel like I am in a dream." He offered her a small bench, carved from the same marble as the pillars. They sat side by side, feet dangling over the edge of the path. Marcus tapped a button on his wrist recorder, and soft jazz music filled the air-warm saxophone notes drifting. Among the glowing leaves, Solara closed her eyes to listen, tilting her head as though she could catch every note in her soul. When the tune ended, she hummed a few bars of a melody from her own world, a song her mother once sang to her at bedtime. Her voice was clear, echoing like a gentle breeze through the flowers. Marcus listened in awe, then asked her to teach him the simple rhythm of her song. She repeated each note in slow syllables, and he sang back, clumsy at first, but improving. With each try, she laughed when he missed a beat, and he laughed at himself, grateful for her patience. Then Marcus surprised her by bringing out 2 slender bracelets that glowed with tiny power cells. "These let us float," he said, fitting one around her wrist and holding the other out to her. Solara studied the device, then slipped it onto her arm as Marcus did. A soft hum rose from the bracelets, and they felt their bodies lift. A few inches off the ground, Solara gasped in delight and spun in a slow circle, robes billowing around her like a comet's tail. Marcus drifted backward, arms outstretched for balance, and she floated over to steady him with a gentle touch. Together, they moved in a slow dance, weightless beneath the glowing canopy, their laughter mingling with the soft music and the whisper of leaves. After a time, they floated back down and undid the bracelets. Marcus led Solara to a small cafe, tucked behind a curtain of vine tendrils. He ordered 2 cups of warm spiced tea, his own special blend of cinnamon and star anise, handed one to her. She sipped carefully, her eyes widening at the fragrant warmth that spread through her chest. "It tastes like comfort," she said, and Marcus's heart lifted at her words. She then offered him a small pouch of her native herbs, which he tasted with hesitation. The herb was cool and minty, with a sweet honeyed finish that soothed his throat. "Your home world shares its healing through this," she explained softly. He nodded, grateful for the gift. They sat close, hands touching over the small table, and spoke quietly of their families and hopes. Marcus told her how he had dreamed of something more than duty, and Solara confided that she had longed for friendship on her lonely journeys. In that gentle moment, beneath the hum of the station, beyond the dome, they both felt a warmth growing that neither had expected. When the station's evening call chimed, signaling closing time, they rose reluctantly. Solara plucked a single moon petal from a nearby flower one that glowed pale blue in low light and pressed it into Marcus's palm. "Keep this," she whispered, "to remember tonight." He tucked the petal into his uniform pocket, its soft glow, a promise he would carry always. As they walked back through the quiet corridors, their fingers brushed once more, and neither could forget the lightness they had shared in the garden of glowing flowers. Marcus and Solara arrived on Earth at dawn, the sky painted in soft pinks and golds above a quiet coastal town. The air smelled of salt and fresh pine, and Solara drew in a deep breath of the cool breeze. Marcus guided her down a curved path of smooth stones leading to his family's cottage, its white walls glowing in morning light. Solara's lavender skin contrasted with the warm wood of the door, and for a moment she wondered if his family would accept her. Marcus squeezed her hand gently and said, "They will be happy to meet you." God. Inside, the cottage was cozy and small. Wooden beams crossed the ceiling, and a stone fireplace held crackling embers. A table set with mismatched chairs stood in the center, and the scent of simmering stew filled the room. Marcus's mother, Eleanor, stepped from the kitchen wearing a flour-dusted apron and a welcoming smile. Her silver hair was tied back in a loose knot, and her eyes shone with kindness. "Marcus, dear, you're home," she said warmly, then paused as she saw Solara. "And you must be Solara," Eleanor added gently. Solara curtsied, her violet eyes glowing with quiet respect. "It is an honor to meet you," she said softly in her melodic voice. Eleanor stepped forward and took Solara's hands in hers. "Welcome to our home," she said, her voice tender. They gathered around the table as Eleanor ladled rich vegetable and barley stew into deep bowls. Steam rose in gentle spirals, carrying scents of rosemary and thyme. Solara watched with fascination as Eleanor placed a fresh loaf of bread in the center. Marcus's younger sister, Claire, peeked around the corner and grinned. She was 14, with bright eyes and a scattering of freckles across her nose. "Hi, Solara," she said, her tone shy but curious. Solara smiled and offered Claire a small nod. Claire edged closer and asked, "Does the stew taste the same on your world?" Solara tasted a spoonful and closed her eyes, savoring the flavors. "This is new to me, but it brings warmth to my heart," she said. Claire laughed and sat beside her, pressing a piece of bread into her own palm. Solara tore a piece and dipped it into the stew, then handed a crumb to Claire. They shared a small, delighted look, and Claire whispered, "Friends." Solara nodded, and Claire's smile widened. After the meal, Eleanor invited Solara into the kitchen to learn how to make her favorite jam strawberry from the garden outside. Solara's long fingers moved carefully as she stirred the bubbling fruit and sugar, and Eleanor guided her with gentle instructions. "Just let it bubble until it thickens, then we will seal the jars." Solara listened and laughed when a drop of jam splashed onto her robes. Marcus watched her from the doorway, his heart warming at the sight of Solara's bright laugh. When the jars were sealed, Solara pressed her palms together and offered a healing chant from her world. Soft, lilting words filled the kitchen, and Marcus's coffee had been recovering from a cold eased, as though soothed by her voice. Lenora placed a comforting hand on Solara's shoulder and said, "Your gifts are more precious than gold." Solara's eyes shone with gratitude. In the late afternoon, they all walked to the shoreline, where waves rolled gently onto smooth pebbles. Marcus taught Solara how to skip stones across the water, and she laughed each time her stone skipped. More than his. Claire ran ahead, collecting shells and arranging them in patterns on the sand. Eleanor watched them with a proud smile. Solara paused to gaze at the horizon where the sun dipped toward the sea. She reached for Marcus's hand and said, "Your world is full of simple wonders." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders and whispered, "And you make it more wonderful." That evening, as the family sat around a crackling fire in the cottage garden, Marcus introduced a custom from Solara's people, a gift of light. He passed her a small lantern filled with glowing crystals. Solara placed it in the center of the table, and its soft radiance cast dancing reflections on their faces. Each family member touched the lantern and offered a wish for peace and joy. Solara's wish was for unity between worlds. Eleanor's was for her son's happiness. Claire's was for new adventures together. Under the lantern's glow, they felt a gentle bond that crossed the stars. As night settled, Solara stood on the porch and looked up at unfamiliar constellations. Marcus joined her, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. "Thank you," he said softly, "for coming here." Solara rested her head on his shoulder and replied, "Thank you for bringing me home." In that moment, the distance between their worlds disappeared, and two hearts once from distant stars found a place where they both belonged. News of Marcus and Solara's marriage spread quickly, carried by Holonet broadcasts and local gossip. Marcus arrived at his office one morning to find protest signs gathering on the front steps. Humans held placards reading, "Keep our species pure and no alien spouses." Solara stood behind him, her lavender skin pale with hurt. She gripped Marcus's arm, and he felt a fierce protectiveness rise in his chest. Inside the building, staff avoided Solara's violet eyes. Whispers followed her as she passed, and someone muttered that her healing chants were witchcraft. Solara swallowed her pride and kept her posture calm. She had faced many judgments on distant worlds, but this close to the man she loved, the pain cut deeper. Marcus watched her through the corner of his eye, his heart aching to erase every cruel word. That evening, the mayor called a town hall to discuss the matter. The meeting room overflowed with townspeople, some angry, some curious. most. Unsure, the mayor explained that interspecies marriage was legal but untested here. He asked for opinions, and voices rose in a harsh chorus. Someone warned of alien diseases. Another said children might be monsters. Solara felt her throat tighten, tears brimming. But she stood firm beside Marcus. When the shouting grew too loud, Marcus raised his hand. "Oh." The room fell silent as a hush settled over angry voices. "Oh." He spoke slowly in simple words that carried strength. "I love Solara," he said. "She has healed me and shown me kindness. She saves lives with her chants. She loves this town as much as I do. Our marriage is built on respect, not fear." His voice trembled, but he held there. Gay's hearts in that hall softened as they saw his devotion. Then Solara stepped forward, her robes catching the dim light. She spoke in careful English, her accent gentle but clear. "I came here for love, not conquest," she said. "I married Marcus because he is honest and kind. I want to help your people with my healing. I want to learn your language fully and share your joys. I ask only for a chance." Her voice did not crack. Instead, it shone with quiet dignity. A woman in the back raised her hand. "Why would you leave your world?" she asked. Solara smiled softly. "Because love is a journey worth every star crossed," she replied. A hush followed her words. Even those who held anger could feel the truth in her simple phrase. A few heads nodded. Marcus felt relief and pride bloom together. After the meeting, townspeople approached them in small groups. One family thanked them for speaking honestly. A farmer offered to teach Solara how to grow earth crops. Children peeked shyly, curious. About her glowing bracelet? Marcus watched Solara answer questions patiently, her smile returning. Each kind word was a small victory against fear. Over the next days, the protests dwindled. News crews filmed Solara helping at the local clinic, her chants easing pain and fear. Marcus walked beside her, guiding translators and holding her hand when strangers stared too long. In the market, vendors greeted Solara with new warmth, offering fruit she had never tasted. She accepted each gift with grace, her heart opening wider to this human world. One afternoon, an elderly man who had led a protest stepped forward, his shoulders bowed. He set down a sign that read, "Unnatural." Then he held out his hand to Solara. "I'm sorry," he said softly. She accepted his hand, warmth flowing between them. "I forgive you," she replied. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes as the old man helped fold the sign. By the end of the week, the town felt different. Fear had given way to curiosity and hope. The mayor declared a day of unity in their honor, and townspeople prepared a small celebration. Marcus and Solara stood at the center, hands clasped, watching neighbors hang lanterns along the streets. In those lights, they saw a promise. Love could conquer fear, and two worlds could truly come together. Marcus and Solara stood before an old warehouse on the edge of town that Marcus had helped to clean and paint. Its tall doors now shone in bright blue, with a sign above reading Unity Center. Inside, the space was wide and open, filled with rows of work tables and art easels. Solara's eyes widened at the sight. She ran her hand along a smooth wooden table and smiled. "This will be a place for everyone," she said softly. Marcus nodded, feeling his heart swell with hope. On the first morning, children arrived clutching paintbrushes and sketchbooks. Marcus introduced Solara to a group of eager faces. "This is Solara," he said. "She will teach you songs and stories from her home." The children hesitated at first, curious about her lavender skin and glowing eyes. Solara knelt to their level and offered each child a small, smooth stone painted like a star. "These stones are from my world," she explained. "Let us make something new together." The children's eyes lit up and they ran to the tables, placing stones on blank canvases. As days passed, the walls filled with murals. Humans and Thalinary worked side by side, painting scenes of twin suns rising over both Earth's oceans and Solara's forested plains. Older artists taught each other brushstrokes and color mixing. Solara showed Marcus how to blend purple and silver to mimic her home sky. He guided her hand when she tried to sketch Earth's distant mountains. At every table, laughter echoed. The shy giggles of children mixing watercolors, the soft hum of Solara's healing chant as she sprinkled glowing dust into a shared water jar. In the afternoon, the center's dance hall came alive. Marcus had set up low-gravity rings that could adjust to human or thalanary needs. A small crowd gathered to watch the first dance class. Elders from both communities wore simple tunics and stood in a circle. Solara led with graceful steps from her homeworld, a slow sway of the hips, followed by a gentle spin of the hands. Marcus taught a basic human waltz, guiding a thalanary elder's hand and foot. At first, their feet stumbled over rhythm. Then, as the soft music played, a blend of human strings and thalanary wind chimes, they found a shared beat. Soon, humans and aliens glided in mixed pairs, laughter floating above the music like bright notes. By evening, the center's garden courtyard became a place of quiet reflection. Marcus and Solara had planted hybrid flowers last month. Bright daisies from Earth crossed with glowing lunar buds from Solara's world. Now, each bloom shone with a soft light. Families wandered along stone paths, stopping to breathe. In the flowers' gentle fragrance, children chased firefly-like lights that Solara released with a flick of her wrist. Marcus sat beside her on a carved bench, watching his fellow townspeople draw close to the glowing plants. He reached for Solara's hand and felt its warmth. "Look," she whispered. "Our worlds are blooming here." On the center's first-month anniversary, the mayor arrived with local reporters. He stood on a small stage surrounded by the murals, the dancers, and the glowing garden. "This Unity Center shows what we can be," he announced. "When we listen, learn, and share, fear gives way to friendship." He turned to Marcus and Solara. "Thank you for your vision and courage." The crowd cheered, and Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Solara squeezed his hand, her violet eyes shining under the lantern light. After the speeches, everyone danced and sang beneath strings of lanterns. Humans tried Solara's healing chant in a round of call and response in Thalanary, hummed along to human folk songs. Children wove flower garlands, placing them on statues of twin planets in the courtyard center. As the stars rose above the open roof, Marcus and Solara stood at the statue's base. He wrapped his arm around her and whispered, "This place is more beautiful than I dreamed." She leaned into him and replied, "Because it grows from both our hearts." When the evening ended, the Unity Center's doors closed quietly behind the last visitors. Marcus and Solara walked home under the same emerald skies where they first met. Their path now wound past glowing gardens and painted walls, proof that two worlds could build something new together. And as they stepped into the night, their hearts were full of promise, knowing that love and understanding had created a home for every soul. Years passed, and the coastal town flourished under the bond Marcus and Solara had helped create. On a warm spring morning, they walked hand in hand through the Unity Center's garden, where the hybrid flowers bloomed brighter than ever. Their children. Mira and Joran, one with Marcus's dark hair and Solara's violet eyes, chased firefly-like lights among the petals. Marcus paused to smile as Mira bowed low before a glowing bloom, her small hands cupping its light. Knelt beside her, studying the petals as though learning a new language. Solara watched them and felt her heart swell. She bent to pick a single moon petal fallen on the path and pressed it between her fingers. The soft glow reminded her of that first night in Marcus's arms beneath emerald skies on the distant station. Now their lives were full of simple joys. Morning walks by the shore, laughter over shared meals, quiet evenings beneath unfamiliar constellations. She squeezed Marcus's hand. "Look how our worlds have grown," she said softly. Marcus nodded, his eyes warm. He led her to a stone bench carved with both Earth's rolling waves and Solara's forested plains. They sat, watching children weave flower garlands to hang on the statue of twin planets in the courtyard center. The Unity Center buzzed with life. Artists added new colors to the murals, and elders taught young students in both human and Thalanary languages. It was a place of constant discovery, much like the love Marcus and Solara shared. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and peppermint fresh herbs from Celera's home that now grew in town gardens. She smiled as she remembered teaching the townspeople how to cultivate those herbs for healing teas. Many who once stood with protest signs now came to drink her teas when they felt cold or upset. They thanked her in shy tones, offering baskets of ripe berries or jars of honey in return. Marcus leaned his head against hers. "Do you remember that night of the town hall meeting?" he asked. Solara closed her eyes at the memory. The harsh voices, the trembling fear, and the moment she stood beside him under harsh lights of judgment. Then the hush, as Marcus spoke his truth and her own quiet plea for understanding. That night had felt like walking through fire, but it had forged something strong and lasting between the man and the hearts of their neighbors. Solara opened her eyes and replied, "I remember fear, but more, I remember hope. That spark we saw when people listened grew into this." She waved her free hand toward the garden, where lanterns swayed lazily overhead in children's. Laughter rose like soft chimes. Marcus kissed her forehead. "We made something beautiful together," he said. Their moment of peace was joined by Claire and her husband Jai, who had married a Thalinary scholar 2 years earlier. Claire's laughter rang out as she waved them over. Jai carried a basket of freshly baked bread and earth. Tradition and Claire brought a vial of Solara's healing salve. The four greeted one another with warm hugs, proof that friendships had formed across both families. As they walked toward the center, the sun reached its highest point, casting gold across the courtyard. A small crowd gathered near the twin planet statue, waiting for the midday ceremony. It was part of the Unity Center's monthly tradition. Each family shared a memory of growth. Today, Marcus and Solara were the guests of honor. They stepped onto the raised platform, the crowd falling, silent in anticipation. Solara spoke first, her voice steady and bright. "We once stood here as strangers to many," she began. "We carried fear in our hearts and questions on our tongues. But we chose to listen instead of react. We chose to learn instead of retreat." She paused, looking at her children dancing at the crowd's edge. "Because love is stronger when it is shared." Marcus continued, "Our journey began with a chance meeting under emerald skies. We found friendship in simple moments, a shared song, a floating dance, a cup of tea. Those moments taught us that every heart, no matter how different, longs for connection." He reached for Solara's hand. "Today, we see the seeds of that connection in every face here." The crowd cheered, and lanterns glowed with renewed warmth. Marcus and Solara stepped down, greeting neighbors who offered flowers and handcrafted gifts. Each gift was a promise to keep building bridges and celebrating differences. As sunset approached, Marcus and Solara returned to the garden bench. The children played at their feet, weaving dreams of tomorrow that stretched beyond the stars. Marcus wrapped an arm around Solara and whispered, "Whatever comes next, I know we will face it together." Solara rested her head on his shoulder and replied, "Together we can birth 100 new worlds of understanding." Under that golden sky, 2 hearts once from distant stars stood united. Their love a living testament that hope and empathy can turn strangers into family, and that the most unlikely marriages can heal whole worlds.